Hello everyone. Today we are going to go over the command line interface and how you go about building a command to run in the command line interface. Now, if you've never seen this before, this can be a little overwhelming. There's a lot of different options and it can be a little confusing if you're not used to it. But once we're done, you'll see it's really pretty straightforward. There are three different sections to any given command that you need to know. And once you know what you're looking at, I think it'll be pretty self-explanatory for you. So I'm going to go over the different parts of the commands. I'm going to show you some examples of them. And then I'm also going to show you how to read the help menus, which give all of the information for the commands. Again, if you're not used to seeing them, it can be a little confusing. But really, once you know what you're looking at, it's not that bad. So that said, let's start with the first part, the command part of the command. So every time you use the command line interface, the first thing you're going to type is the command, which is simply a program. It's a program that's inside the Windows System 32 folder, and you just need to know what some of those commands are. Now, our book has been nice enough to give us a list of commands that they want us to use for specifically in this case for network troubleshooting. But first of all, let's just start with a command that doesn't require anything else, just the command. And that command will say ipconfig. So if I just type ipconfig, this is a command that's going to give us information about our configuration of our IP addresses. So here I hit enter, and that's what it's done. It's given me some brief information about the different network adapters I have in my computer and addresses. Now notice I really only have one functioning address adapter right now, and it's an IP version 4 Ethernet adapter. And that's it. This is all you needed to do in order to get this information, was type the command. Now, most commands have extra features, extra functions that they can do. So along with the ipconfig command, I can type in the second part of this command, which is called a switch. All a switch does is it basically says, this is the program I'm going to use, ipconfig in this case, and I am going to make it do something else or something more, or sometimes something completely different. So there is a switch. I'll just show you a switch, and then I'll show you how I go about finding these. ipconfig and a switch is either going to have a / or a dash before it. In this case, we have a / and then all, the word all. What this switch is going to do is give me a whole bunch of information, much more than just the simple brief explanation up here. So I'll hit enter, and you'll see a lot more information just came up, and that's because I used the all switch for the ipconfig command. It's the same information, but now there's more of it. So notice here in my Ethernet adapter, I have my IP version 4 address, but notice I also now have my IP version 6 address above here. I have the DHCP version 6 information, like where I'm getting my information from, my default gateway, my DHCP server, a lot more information on each one of these, including physical addresses if they have them. And so this is what the all switch does for me. Instead of, if we go back up to what we were looking at before, this was ipconfig before the switch, and this is ipconfig after the switch. So that's what it is. So now the switch. How do I know what switches are there, and how do I know what they do? Well, every command line utility has a help menu, and the help menu can be, if I can type, the help menu is gotten the same way for all of these. It is a switch itself, and the switch is a / and then a question mark. That brings up the manual page or the help menu for every command that we have. So if we know ipconfig, for example, we can do / and that will give us this, which is the manual page. This is the list of all the things that ipconfig can do. Now, this looks like a lot, again, but if we break it down, it's not nearly as bad. First of all, coming up here, we can see usage. Usage tells us how we can type it in. The first thing in usage for every command is the command name. So the first thing you're going to type in is the command name, and then a space. And then after that, there's all of these different options here. If any of these options is bracketed, has a bracket on the left or the right side, it is optional. You do not need to use it. So that clears up some mess, first of all. So like this is in brackets. Actually, you look at this, all of this is one big bracket. So this is all optional. None of these things are necessary. And then inside this optional bracket, we have a bunch of different switches. These are all individual switches. Renew, release, renew 6, release 6, flush DNS. These are all just little ways that we alter how the ipconfig command works. Now what do they do? Well, that's down here. If you go to the options section, it will then go through a list of all the different options and then a little explanation about what they do. Remember, you see this, don't get overwhelmed by this. If it has brackets, it's just simply an optional switch, an optional function of the program. Okay, so all of this is in a big bracket, meaning all of this is just simply optional. These are just different individual options you can use. Now, to give you a slightly easier one to look at, let's do ping. If we do ping and then the help menu, we're going to get just this. This is much shorter. Notice here the usage is the same. We have ping, and then we have a bunch of these individual switches that have brackets around them. So these are all individual things that you can use to add functionality or change functionality to ping. Now ping, unlike ipconfig, has a third part of the command line. So we've talked about the command line, the command itself. We've talked about switches. The third thing we have is a target. Targets do not have brackets around them, and as a result, they are required. So when you have a command that has a lot of this stuff here, at the end of it, if there's something that does not have brackets, you know that that is another required element of the command. So in this case, for ping, we're trying to see if a device, a particular IP address, is available and will respond. So, for example, if I wanted to see if Google was going to respond, I would ping google.com. And then, and I would make sure I have all 3 W's or it'll get mad at me. So then I hit enter, and there. Now it's going to be checking with Google. It's going to be pinging Google. I used the 2 required elements of a ping command, which is the command itself, which is always required, and then over here at the very end we see that this target name was also required. So that's what I did. There's the command, there is the target. Now, if I wanted to use any of these switches, these optional switches, I can, and here's a list of what all of these optional switches do. So for example, -T will ping the specific host until stopped. So notice ping just pings 4 times and then is done. If I were to use that -T switch, so ping and then -T, ping -T, now if I do google.com again, notice it will start pinging and it will just keep on pinging, and it's not going to stop pinging until I tell it to stop. It conveniently tells me type Control-C to stop the ping. So if I type Control-C, it stops the ping. Otherwise, it would have just kept on pinging and pinging and pinging. And so essentially, that's it. That is what command line does. You have the command, you have any optional switches you want, and then you have sometimes, if it's required, a target. And for each different command we're going to use, we're going to have different combinations of these. So for example, if I looked up the information for ARP, the ARP command, notice here we have ARP and a switch and then a certain address and so on. This is basically just telling you what you need for it to do. So they give you examples down here. So ARP-S, the internet address, and then the Ethernet address. And then that will add a static entry. S for static. D is a dynamic address. ARP, add a dynamic address, the IP address, and then optional IF address. Notice, because it's in brackets. And for A, displays the current entries. And then when you have displaying current entries, these are all optional. You don't need to type them. So for example, I probably won't see anything because this is a virtual machine or much interesting. But if I just do an ARP-A, notice this is all optional here. ARP-A, I should get a basic table, my basic ARP table. And there it is. These are the addresses of things that are known inside my computer. This is my ARP table. So, all of that being said, let's take a moment. I'm going to clear this up so we can start fresh. And let's do a couple of very simple commands with the switches. So if I want to, for example, and let's pull up the ping help just so you can see where I'm getting my information from. If I want to ping an address, make sure it's available, but also maybe I have the IP address, but I don't know what the host name is. Ping with a -A switch will ping like it normally does, but it will also resolve the address to hostname. So it'll tell me what the hostname is. It'll do a DNS lookup for me. So let's try that. Let's do ping with a -a. And now let's come up with an address. And let's do the address 4.2.2.2. This is one of the backbone DNS servers for the internet. So if I hit enter, what should happen is that it will start pinging this address, but it will also resolve the hostname for me. So let's see it work. Okay, so here we are. This is the hostname it resolved. So that's the address I pinged. This is the hostname, b.resolvers.level3.net. That is one of the backbone routing ISPs of the internet. And then it did my ping, and then it was done. So again, all I did was type in the command, a switch, which was optional, and then the address. Let's try another example. Say I wanted to send this output, instead of leaving it on the screen, I wanted to put it to a text file. So I can do the same thing, ping a 4.2.2.2, but I want it to go to a text file. A simple greater than symbol, which actually is supposed to be an arrow pointing to the right. So this is my command, and it is being pointed or pushed into some text file. And then I can just type whatever name of the text file I want. So we'll call it ping.txt. So there. What this will do is this will take this command, switch, and target, and then it'll output that command to this text document. Now, the quick question, of course, that everyone's going to say is, well, where is this text document going to be? Text document is going to be wherever basically my current working directory is. In Windows command line, the current working directory is basically a list of folders, and that's what this is. This is the C drive, and then a backslash says, okay, there's a folder, and then the folder is the users folder, and then a backslash is another folder, and then there's my name. So basically there is a folder inside the users folder, inside the C drive, called Sean Jones. Let's take a quick look at that. If I open up the computer and I go to the C drive, notice the C drive's here. If I go to the C drive, inside the C drive, there is a users folder. That's the users folder. If I go inside the users folder, there is Sean Jones. There is my folder right there. So if I double click on that, this is the folder that I am working in. It's as if I were in here. So if I wanted to create a new file in here, I could right click and say new file. I could do any number of things, but I'm working in this directory. On the command line, I am also working in this directory, in this exact directory. It just looks a little bit different. It just, instead of having a visual representation of these folders, it still is local disk C, users, and Sean Jones. See that? It's the same thing. So wherever you see this is the prompt itself, the command prompt. This is telling you which folder that you're working in. So if I were to run this command, it would run this ping, the same command that I just did here. But instead of outputting it to the command line, it would output it to a text file that it would then save in this folder. So when I run this, we'll see this. I run it. And notice it shows up here. And one thing to note is when you are working in the command line interface, if you run a command and nothing happens, you see no output here, that doesn't mean it failed. It means there was no error. Because your output, remember, you were sending your output to this text file. So if you don't see anything, that's not bad. That just means that there was nothing to report. It was finished. So the command is over. So if I were to come here into my ping.txt file, I should see this information because I piped it. I outputted it from here to here. So let's open it up. And there you see it. There is the ping command. So to sum up, one more time, when you're using the command line, you have three parts to any basic command. You have the command name itself, which is the program. You have a bunch of possible optional switches. They're different for each command. If they're optional, they're going to be in a bracket. They'll be surrounded by brackets when you look here in the help menu. And then you may have a target or more targets. If you see something that does not have a bracket, it is required. Sometimes you'll have more than one. Usually it'll be this format though. It'll be command, a bunch of possible optional switches, and then some not optional, some required target. And that's it. For every command, they're going to have the same format. If you need to get to the help menu to see what all these switches are, what's available to you, you can always do the /question mark switch. This switch is used for every single command in the command line, and it will take you to this manual page so you can see the information that you need. Then, once you type it in, it will then output information that you're asking for. If you want to send it to a text file, you simply type the command like you normally would, do what is called the greater than symbol. Basically, it's the little arrow that's going to point to whichever text file you want it to output to. When you do this, it's going to save this file in whatever folder you're working in. The folders are listed here as, well, basically text: the C drive, the users folder, and then the Sean Jones. So this is this folder, which is inside this folder, which is inside this folder. Okay? So I hope this helped. I hope this wasn't too long and too boring. And remember, if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me. But give us a try. Take a look at these. Take a look at these manual pages, and I think you'll see when you start looking at all the different pages we have that they all follow the same format, the same pattern, and so you'll start being able to tell what all these different things are. Each of these things inside brackets, they're just little options. Okay? All right. Good luck, and I will see you all in class.